in the core structure of what defines our economic system and the psychology that is created, supported, and rewarded. I keep hearing the phrase in the Occupy movement, we are the 99%. And while I understand and admire that communicative gesture, I would like to expand back and think about this a little bit more technically. I think it's a little more accurate to say we're not the 99%. We're actually the 100%. And all of us are to blame. The only reason the 1% have what they do is because the 99% continues to support all the elements that fuel the wealth of the 1%. The system is literally designed to support the 1% over the 99. The values that we see in our culture are designed to make sure you aspire to those that maintain the role of the 1%. It's called the American dream, remember? The American dream, which only exists for the 1%, and always did. You know, the success of us is often measured in our material wealth or how we gain admiration in the culture, our dignity defined by what others think of us. Is that true success? No, that is a false, distorted value that came from a system that needed to be based on everyone being inquisitive, competitive, cutthroat, and essentially inhumane. The historical illusion, I have to point out, which continues to this day, which I know is manifest in a lot of gestures here in this audience and across the world, rightfully so, however, but it's still an illusion, is that there is some person or some group that is explicitly to blame. Rather than focus on the fact that the 1% of the world's population has over 40% of the planet's wealth, let's instead ask ourselves the question, how is that even possible? How is that even possible that our system allows for such a thing? Do we really have grounds to be surprised at the way the world is operating when the very foundation of what motivates the current social order is taken into account? Should we really be surprised at all? What is the economy? I ask the question. The monetary market model at work in the world means that through the movement of money, power and property can be bought and sold at will within the confines of, say, legal legislation. Legal legislation, by the way, which, yes, is for sale in the open market, just as all politicians are for sale in the open market. Just as all administration's policies in general are for sale in the open market, what did you expect when the whole system is based upon the buying and selling of property and power and hence influence? There is no escape from the influence of money with respect to governmental policy. Why? Because government in this system is nothing more than a business. That's all it can be. And I hope that can become clear in the minds of many. And see, the true root of change has to be beyond the lobbying for government to do things within our favor. It has to go deeper. And again, while people in the world continue to protest this system, they come up with such terms as corporatism and crony capitalism and even fascism to highlight the legal reality, for example, that yes, businesses can influence all legislations through what's called corporate lobbying. Yet it's legal. Well, why wouldn't it be? Again, this is what this system is. It's those that seem to impose the assumption that this system is something that it isn't that continues to bother me. The system was always fascist at its very origin. It just took this long for the root of it to rise to the top because the cancer continues to grow. And now the social immune system is noticing it. And that's the only difference. You know what creates jobs in the world today? Problems. Everyone talks about labor. Again, you know what really creates jobs? Problems. In an efficient world, there will be less of a need for all of us to be employed or to engage in any type of long-term action that we would consider a job. People will learn to be satisfied and not greedy. They would learn to understand their relationship to the environment. The system of progress would be less and less need to resolve problems, not more and more being generated, which is what we're doing today. In other words, there is an empirical decoupling from what actually supports life on this planet and the scientific reality that we inhabit and have been learning about. It's built right in. The monetary market system at its core must change, not the policies that regulate it. On a different level, just to throw this in, for those that have never thought about the fact that the entire structure of our economy is intrinsically flawed, there's a culturally hegemonic attribute of this system that goes unnoticed. For example, if you have $1 million and you put it into a bank account, a CD investment at 4% interest, you'll make $40,000 a year for doing what?
Nothing.
However, if you take loans to buy your home and you need to take out credit, as it's called, you're paying interest in. And guess where that interest goes? It goes to fuel the 1% or those with the wealth that have the ability to actually deposit money and make money off of it. Am I the only one that sees the hegemonic flaw in that? Yet you rarely see a sign being held up defending or defining the interest system. You rarely see people say, why do we even have interest to begin with? It's one of those things that goes unnoticed. The interest of the 1%, but we all seem to think it's okay and normal. This is the problem. No one's realizing what the structural problem actually is. They don't realize the reinforcement they are doing to actually continue this system, while on the other side of their awareness they think they're fighting it. In fact, I'll say this. The values that comprise our culture today are what actually support the higher level classes and systematically repress them without them even knowing it. As I begun to say earlier, in the 1960s, a man named Stokely Carmichael, a famous activist, coined a very important phrase called institutional racism. This was referring now to how unnoticed underlying policies and structures within the social system undermine African American prosperity and equality. What we have today is a mere variation. It's institutional classism. And it is equally a civil rights issue as anything else that has ever existed. Coming back to the nature of Occupy Wall Street. Wall Street itself, as we know, which is the ultimate manifestation of the pursuit of money as a commodity rather than any form of true creation or social contribution, is naturally ripe for symbolic objection. For at a minimum, it shouldn't exist at all, and most certainly not have the grand effect it does on the stability of our economy today. However, that being stated, it must again be made clear that Wall Street and the banking system are not the source of our problems. They are only symptoms of a larger order economic cancer which will continue to not only create more imbalance, but will completely eventually fail by its own gravity and its outdated assumptions of our human conduct and its false environmental relationships. What we are seeing in the world today is, in my view, the beginning of the end when it comes to the protest movements that have been started. This is the beginning of a change of values and structure that has been needed for a very, very long time, where our emerging understanding is now overriding the traditional assumptions that have held these structures in place. I want to ask one final question. If you were given the option to participate in a program of sharing, to have the values where someone said to you, if I give to you, would you be willing to give to me? Not in the sense of barter, however, but in the value of simply what it means to actually give. And the understanding that when you look back on your life in the future, are you really going to remember? And by the way, I'm speaking to the whole of whoever's listening here, not just you. Are you going to remember all those things you did in your self-interest? Are the CEOs and bankers and the elite that exist, are they really going to have pride in themselves when they look back in their life to think that all the money that they acquired actually was a measure of some type of success? Isn't the true measure of success your ability to relate to your environment, hence the needed reciprocation that defines our intrinsic unification and unity? Now, I'm not here to say, when I address the monetary system, that we don't need surgery to remove the effects and cancers of this system. The tumors, in fact, as it were. We desperately do. We do need massive political pressures and to do whatever we can to help this system push into the right direction. But I have to remind all of you that until the root source is addressed, until a movement comes together globally, as it is slowly doing, that's willing to work together to override the system as it exists, not find a seat at the proverbial table, as so many say, but to establish a completely new table, no long-term societal change is going to work. So I leave that with you, and I deeply commend you on your courage, and I thank you for your time, and good luck.